also just present. Snacks?
We can't hear Tam.
So we're going to just take roll call, and then we will adjourn to an executive session. So Maggie Ty?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. Brian?
Present.
David?
Here.
And Tam?
Here.
And can I please have a motion to move to executive session?
I move we
Yeah, go ahead.
enter executive session.
Second? Is there a second?
I second.
And please indicate agreement with another roll call. So Maggie Ty?
Yay.
Brian?
Yay.
David?
Yay.
And Tam?
Yay.
Okay, motion passes. We are now moving into executive session. So we will close down Zoom and we will move over to Google Meet.
And I think, Deborah, we might want to announce that we'll be back to our regular session at 6 p.m. back in this platform.
Correct. Thank you.
We're both in.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we are in executive session. The purpose to talk, get some legal updates.
And I think Maggie Ty will need.
Maggie Ty and Tam and David, you're still in the Zoom call?
Reeves, are you there?
I have just received word that the executive session will be extended until 6:15. 6:15.
I think everyone is here.
Okay. I don't see Brian.
Looks like he's logged in.
There he is. Okay. All right. It is 6:21. We completed the executive meeting. I apologize to anyone who's been waiting for us for the delay, and appreciate your patience with us. It is 6:22 and I call the meeting to order. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda as posted.
Second.
Any discussion? If the motion is to approve the agenda, please indicate approval by saying aye. Maggie Tai?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Tam?
Aye.
And I agree, motion passes. The agenda is approved. Sorry, I'm trying to open too many things at one time. We are, during the state mandated district closures and social distancing in response to COVID-19, all public input should be submitted by email to the board email address. We have received a number of emails, and I can assure the public that these emails have been reviewed by the entire board. The next item is the superintendent's report, and I will defer to our superintendent, Kolosky.
Good evening. Hopefully I can be heard now. We have a few items on the superintendent report. First up is, as you will note on our personnel report on the consent agenda, staff has moved forward with the hiring process for our high school principal position. And because we've been able to do this meeting in a virtual setting, I am very pleased to introduce our selection and recommendation to the board, Walter Kelly, who is able to actually be here, sort of, with us tonight. Walter comes from, I'm going to get it wrong, Texas, and he's going to have, he's here with us and will can he introduce himself? And just to remind the board, it was a process we started prior to, of course, the closure of schools. We were able to continue it, a rigorous process, a full day of interviews with 3 different panels, the next day with superintendent and cabinet interviews, several conversations, and I am really delighted to be inviting Walter Kelly to join our admin team as our MIHS principal, starting contract year July 1, but I know he's already been working with and making some contacts with our team already. So Walter, let's see if we can get you at least available to talk.
Hi, greetings, Donna. How are you?
Great.
Good. Well, first, thank you so much for the opportunity. It was really a pleasure to meet so many of the students, parents, faculty, and staff at Mercer Island. In fact, it really has our family excited about making our move to the Pacific Northwest. So first, I just appreciate the honor. Second part of it is I really look forward to learning from Mercer Island and your community and your school. And my hope is it's simply that I can uphold the traditions and move forward your hopes for Mercer Island High School. And last but not least, I look forward to meeting each one of you and getting to know you and getting to know everyone in the community. So with that in mind, I'll be glad to defer back to you guys, and thank you.
So Walter, while you're still with us, why don't you tell us a little bit about your trajectory to arrive at this place of being selected as the next principal for Mercer Island High School. Give us a little bit of your resume.
All right, I'll try to respect everybody's time with this. After teaching high school and middle school science for a total of 6 years, went into administration. I worked as an assistant principal at an affluent, high-performing middle school and then a very diverse urban high school. Following that, I was principal of the middle school and the high school at Telluride in Telluride, Colorado, which was somewhat of a dream, probably a little earlier in life than it would have worked for our family. I then returned to Texas and worked in Dallas and the Richardson Independent School District, which serves about 40,000 students, a very diverse district just north of Dallas. Served as a middle school principal for an art and science magnet, and then also worked at Lake Highlands High School, which is a large, comprehensive, diverse high school, before coming for the last 10 years working at Highland Park High School, which I believe has some similarities with Mercer Island. The place, it seems.
You're cutting out a little bit, Walter. You might need to repeat that. Just that last little bit about Highland Park.
Oh, okay. And at Highland Park, we're a comprehensive public high school, 6.2 square miles in our district. We serve 2,200 students in the high school. And I believe there are a lot of similarities in what you guys have as a school. And with the people in place in the school, I really believe and hope this is a great match.
So we are excited to have Walter joining us. His wealth of experience is going to bring a new lens to our high school and to our leadership team. And so welcome, Walter. We all look forward to actually meeting you, and hopefully you'll be able to bring your family to one of our board meetings when we get established back in real live meetings so that we can truly meet you face to face. So thank you for being able to dial in to our meeting tonight.
My pleasure, and thank you all so much.
Welcome.
Next up on the report, we are going to have staff go through a emergency operations update. We've created a slide deck to support all of the different parts and pieces, and staff is going to jump in with all of the different parts that go together. You can see on the slide deck here, the photo that we chose shows lots of different parts and pieces that we have been navigating as we work through this COVID-19. And before we even start, I'm going to echo the words of our state superintendent this morning in the call with the superintendent, was to remind everyone in the room virtually that first and foremost, this is a public health crisis. And we need to acknowledge that. I'm echoing really badly. Moving forward, we just need to really remember that. So let's get going. Andrews, I believe you are driving, or who is driving the slide deck?
Yes, I'm driving.
Okay, go ahead. So a couple of pieces. We always like to celebrate and recognition at each of our board meetings, and even in these trying times this week, our staff has really been reaching out to our students, really emphasizing that social emotional learning. And if you haven't seen it yet, we've provided a link here. And Andrews, why don't you go ahead and just link so we can start out with our awesome band program created a video to send out to their students to say, hey, we're thinking of you. So maybe we'll just play the first little bit of that, Andrews. Couldn't resist. We played the whole thing. So that was something that was sent out to our students via Schoology to let them know that we are thinking about them and want to support them in continuing education as best we can during this really very upside down time for our students. I do want to show another little video that one of our librarian teacher, Molly Harnish at Northwood, who is in charge, so to speak, of much of the mindfulness that occurs at Northwood. And Molly created a video that has then gone out on Seesaw to our Northwood Owls. Andrews, maybe not again the whole thing, but just through the first part.
Harnish, teacher librarian, here to get us ready for our mindful moment. Just like we do a mindful moment every morning at school at 9:20, we hope you will join us in doing the mindful minute practice at home. And I'm here to get us started.
So we are going to, of course, post this slide deck. So if you want to watch Molly and her mindful minute, we'll hope that you will take a look at that. So these are some of the ways that our teachers this week are connecting with our students and supporting them during this, again, topsy-turvy time. Go ahead, Andrew. And at this point, I am going to ask our Assistant Superintendent, Fred Rundle, to talk to you a little bit about some of the other things that are happening and where we move next as we move forward in learning. Fred?
Thanks, Donna. Greetings to everyone this evening. The weeks have bled into weeks and days into days, and I think I can speak on behalf of the entire administrative team and say that we couldn't be more focused and more dedicated on our students and our schools right now than we have been in the last 2 and 3 weeks, even going back to February, when I know Tony Kuhn and his team were first taking precautionary measures to protect our schools and to keep them as healthy and safe as possible. It's been a journey. We have learned. Those who I know in the private sector oftentimes use the term fail forward fast. And we on the public side, while we innovate and we look to new ideas, it oftentimes is in different spheres. But I can say that we've built and rebuilt and torn down many different models and structures as the landscape has changed. But through it all, students have been the priority and trying to figure out how to deliver on the very best for our students. And so, Andrews, I'll let you start us off here. The intention of tonight's presentation to our community and to you, school board, is to really give you a glimpse of what we've been preparing and some of the next steps that we'll be rolling out beginning next week. But then also just give you some ideas of those other priorities that the governor had with regard to childcare, nutrition, safety, our seniors, and of course, learning. So we're going to start it off with learning. And Ann Dreves was working with a teacher today, and we thought that this was a great exemplar of the movement forward.
So this week, our teachers were really encouraged to re-engage and connect with their students and families again. And we felt like this picture really said it all, that students really are the priority. And I was just so pleased to see so many happy, smiling kids in this photo. They were all very excited to be able to see each other and interact while maintaining that safe social distancing and separation there. So it was just a great reminder, bringing us back to our vision, mission, and values for the district.
With us tonight, in addition to Ann Dreves-Ronzer, who's our Director of Technology, is our Director of Learning Services, Jamie Prescott, our Assistant Director of Learning Services, Nova Williams, our Director of Special Services, Sue Ann Booby, and others from Learning Services. So I'm going to move it over as we start with a big picture, then move into elementary, middle, and high school. So Jamie and Nova, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. This slide just tries to capture where we are today, tomorrow, and then next week, just to show families, the board, where we are and what we're working towards. So it's broken out by level and just gives you a quick overview about what is going to be happening. And so at each of the levels, effective next week, our goal was to produce a more comprehensive and robust learning schedule for students and parents. And our expectation is we were able to roll that out on March 30th per Chris Reichdahl with OSPI. And so we have been working diligently this week to get things ready to roll out. And we'll go into some more details as we move to the next few slides.
So I'll take us through kind of what next week looks like. So on the previous slide, you saw a little bit about how our instructional coaches are helping us with this process of moving learning forward. So, excuse me, one of the things, well, all of the things they're working on right now are these learning schedules for each grade level. So the goal is that we would have a smattering of options that spans language arts, math, science, Spanish, PE, social studies, really all content to provide to a sort of roadmap in essence to families and students as well, so that they can revisit some of the material that they've done or reuse some of the skills that they've already learned in their classrooms. The goal moving forward is that this would be distributed weekly to families, and the staff, as you saw in the previous slides, are working on just check-ins with their kids. And that was kind of one of the goals that came out of each of our work groups, was that teachers really wanted to connect with kids. They were worried that they were feeling isolated, so they wanted to make sure that they were able to have that opportunity to connect with them. So they've been doing that, and that'll continue to go on as we move forward. Our instructional coaches are taking the lead on this initial week, and then we've included our special ed coaches and special ed staff, as well as tomorrow meeting with some of our learning support and ELL teachers to support those kiddos as well as we progress into this.
So to give a quick idea of what is going to be different than what we have provided previously, the elementary level instructional coaches have put together a weekly concrete schedule with learning targets or a learning focus that you'll see on the far left. So I just took a quick screenshot of the third grade reading. So every grade, K-5, will have a detailed schedule like this with every core content area and some specialist areas where there's the learning focus listed so parents know what it is that the student is working on. There are articles, so if we can't click on them here, but there is an article. We took the UDL approach in looking at resources, the Universal Design for Learning, to think about how to make things as accessible as possible to all students. So within the articles that are provided for next week, There are ways to differentiate the reading level. So there's on-grade reading level, and then there's below-grade reading level. There's the ability to take text to speech so that students can hear it in an audio version versus just the written text. And then our coaches put together a graphic organizer to help with the thinking, and then a worksheet with questions. So everywhere along the week, there are articles that are related to the learning focus. And then additionally, there are extension activities. So if a student either finishes earlier than the anticipated time frame, or they're really interested in a topic or one of the extension ideas, then there are opportunities for them to extend beyond. And so this is, like I said, just the reading component, but we have it for every grade level and every core subject. And within this, it's been a great opportunity for the coaches to be able to model exemplar lessons and opportunities to show teachers what it might look like. It's not the end all be all, but what it might look like to have an opportunity to engage or teach a lesson digitally, and what are the different ways in which to collect feedback from students and provide feedback to students. So they're working very hard right now and first thing tomorrow so that this is ready to go for all principals to review tomorrow afternoon, and then we can get it launched for Monday.
One of the things that we've been working on with all of our staff is the notion, and some of our community members may have heard it before, and we brought it up in a couple of board meetings, but that's the gradual release of responsibility, where we begin with a lot of modeling and you gradually release the responsibility to the learners. And we're taking that same approach with our adult learners as we're learning and navigating this new opportunity before us. Our coaches, as Jamie was just saying, and Nova also mentioned, the coaches have really been modeling, and our teachers will be working in their teacher teams. Our principals, we're holding staff meetings this week, and we were finishing our final preparations for our teachers, because next week they'll be meeting in grade levels across the district, developing the weekly calendars and lesson objectives for the grade levels. And so it's now going to be coaches and now coaches and teachers. And so it's really exciting to see this all really come together. As we move into the middle school, the IMS team, led by Aaron Miller, Mary Jo Budges, and Weston Lucas, have been really focused with their leadership team and their instructional team at the middle school. The concept that they've come up with, a little different than the elementary, and you'll see the high school is even different than that. And I think that speaks to just the different type of learner at each phase. But the middle school, some families may have already started to see some of the tasks that are being assigned. Each content area that the students are in throughout their week, whether or not that's the core areas or electives, will be posting to Schoology 3 and 5 tasks that they want the students to complete. Some of these will be review materials, some of them will be moving forward. And then the teachers will also be holding kind of like office hours, where they'll be posting to their students 4 hours a week on 4 different days when they're available for students just to check in. And then students are certainly encouraged and welcome to make appointments, or families can as well, to check in with teachers. There'll be videos posted alongside of some things. Some will be from external sources, some from internal sources. But the schedule that you see there is really a reflection of when the grade level teams will be having upwards of 3, even 4 hours of concentrated kind of PLC time when they'll be planning. And so our special ed team will kick things off on Monday, when they're really thinking through how do we support students throughout this week. Then language arts, social studies, and math, and you can see as it goes forward throughout the week. The idea from some teachers will be that they'll post assignments, or they'll post their activities all at once. And so Andres, if you can click on the assigned learning tests, I wanted to give everyone just a flavor of what it might look like. This happens to be a post that went up today from Julie Biggs, one of our art teachers at the middle school. And what this was for students, thank you, Andrews, was just a quick memo, and it was letting students know, similar to the elementaries, where that kind of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday concept, you can see what Miss Biggs is going to be asking her students to do on Monday with generating ideas, and Tuesday. In here, I don't have the links there, but in Schoology, there's also the backup links that explain and give students more detail. And then if you continue scrolling down, Andrews, a little bit further, you can start to see where she's talking to her students about uploading videos with Ms. Shaner. And then at the bottom, her office hours are going to be 10 to 11, Monday through Thursday. So families are probably starting to already see some of these from the middle school team. And next week, they will pick up and continue. And so our students will now be able to check in, and their teachers will be able to check in with our students on learning activities. If we go then to our high school, the high school is, there's, all kinds of discussion taking place at the high school. Our middle school and our elementary, as we've communicated to families, they will see progress reports from the second trimester. Tomorrow, the elementary progress reports will be released, I believe, at 5 o'clock, and then on Monday at 10 o'clock for our middle school. Obviously, being on the trimester system, the second trimester really began right after Thanksgiving, so there was a much larger learning opportunity in terms of time for those two spans of grades, whereas the high school really had just gotten going in their second semester, which would be the third quarter. The third quarter technically ends next week, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But in addition to thinking about the teaching and learning, the high school has really been also grappling with grading and trying to make sure that we are adequately assessing students for the work that they've and the time they've had in class, recognizing that it's been a very short period of time. But the formal departmental meetings are underway, and they will begin in earnest next week in terms of the formal meetings. Schoology posts that have been going up are going to be ramped up and intensified and be less about just plain optional learning, but more of, here are the things that we need to start covering and reviewing as a class in preparation for new learning, or these are new pre-learning activities that teachers need students to start re-engaging. One of the things we all have to remember is after this period of time, our students have been in a lot of different spaces, probably socially, emotionally, intellectually. And so a piece of this is going to be getting their sea legs back under them as well. So an example of some activities that have been posted and are heading up. Andres, if we can start with the pre-learning activities and assignments. This is from a English class from Creighton Lahary's class, and this was a post to his Schoology page. This was on the Great Gatsby, and some reading that goes with it, and then some actual core things that they're going to be doing. If you can go back to the next one, it's a little clearer. Sorry, that didn't post as large. This is another one. This was from the Grapes of Wrath. And so Creighton's posting this, getting ready to introduce some concepts in concert with what's going on in the US history class, in the block class that they're teaching with regard to the Great Depression. And so you can see that we're starting to see the unit guides, and students are being, on the Schoology page, there's explicit directions as to what Mr. Lahary wants students to start engaging in. So families and students can expect to start seeing these robust expectations starting to get rolled out by teachers as they re-engage. There's a plethora of different videos that I'm starting to see as teachers are either finding those or creating those. We're ramping up and slowly getting used to what these online modules look like. But our focus and our plan all along has been, let's be really intentional about the learning that we want for the students. And that's where the high school teams will really be focused next week. In fact, we know we have some high school classes down in our middle school, just like we have some middle school math down in our elementaries. And we need to start having those conversations around essential learning. So let's go into our next slide, Andrews. And talk a little bit about spring break. We know that, I mean, in many ways, spring break, is something that students maybe looking forward to, and in this case, it probably is something that we all wish maybe didn't exist, but it is on the calendar, but we don't want learning to come to an end at that point. And so we're looking at this week of the 6th through the 10th as, on our side, a plan, do, study, act. We've been planning and we'll be doing and we've been doing, and now we need to study how is this working so we can refine it, we can reflect, and we can continue to build upon the model. And for our students, our teachers next week will actually be, and I know MIHS made a commitment this year that there's no homework over the break. But given the circumstances in these trying times, we're going to need to break that a little bit because we need to get learning moving forward. And so teachers will be preparing things for students to be working on so that we can continue that consistency and don't lose momentum that we're going to build or that we have been building, and we're going to really ramp up next week. Next slide, Andrews. So once students return back on April 13th, I do want to make sure that everyone understands the partnership and the value that we have on that as a Mercer Island Education Association and as a school district. We've been working together since the beginning of this to create memorandums of understanding as we define the work environment for all of us moving forward. Aaron Battersby from our school district office and Sally Lozier, the association president, have worked tirelessly to be working on behalf of everyone to come up with a good model. And so with that, moving closer and closer as we're defining that, we think we're going to be able to continue to create opportunities that make sure that we're thinking about equity and accessibility. And those have been big rocks, but not in a negative sense. They have been big rocks because they've been on our minds since the beginning. And we've taken some criticism for that. And the board, I know that you've been part of that at sometimes of hearing criticism of not letting that get in the way. And I assure you, we haven't let it get in the way, but we haven't let it get out of our thinking because we need to make sure that that's there, and that's not going to stop. We have learning opportunities and tasks that focus on essential learning and objectives, and then certainly preparing for learning beyond this current school year. We know that there, once we hit spring in any given, in a typical year, we hit spring and it feels like June is upon us right away. We know this year isn't going to be different, and we have to think about that. I want to turn it over to Erin Battersby, give her a second to chime in as she's been hard at work. Erin?
Yeah, hi. Thank you. I've got to manage. Hold on. Yes. Perfect. I think we've got it. Sorry, I was getting access. I'm apparently not as tech savvy as some of our fantastic teachers and you all. I want to emphasize, Fred is outlining sort of our current thinking. It's ever evolving. We have been in fantastic partnership, the MIA president and all of her members, as well as my colleagues and fellow administrators and teachers. I mean, from top to bottom, we've been looking at how to move student learning forward. What we're presenting tonight is really sort of our thinking as to what it'll look like. We don't have a firm understanding, and we have to remind ourselves to go slow and be intentional about what we're doing. At this point in time, we're still in negotiations with the union in terms of what tomorrow will bring for us. But what we do know is that everyone in our district, all teachers, all paraeducators, bus drivers, custodians, we're all committed to ongoing learning and really creating learning opportunities that are equitable and that we can achieve. So when I think that we can't emphasize enough that this is a new time for us, and it's uncharted territory, which is why we're trying to give updates of what it might look like, and that is still not firm. So I just want to be cautious that the things that have been presented tonight may look different when they ultimately are rolled out. So this is not etched in stone, and there's still a lot of work to be done, but this is the direction we're leading into. I don't know if that is clear or if anybody has any questions.
The only thing I would add to that, Aaron, is I think it is a good reminder that we haven't, since the very beginning, tried to just jump in or chase other models or chase other districts, either near and far. That it's really been about taking slow and steady steps so that we're bringing everyone along. That may have been frustrating to some, and it may have been a great relief to others. We've stuck with that because we think it's in the best interest of students, because if our staff and our paraeducators and everyone is feeling comfortable and part of the solution, then there's going to be more ownership as we go through. So it is a good reminder that, it will continue to evolve. It's going to continue to change. It already has in the 3 short weeks that we've been at it. And we have a lot of continued learning and reflecting to do with our partners in MIEA. I'm just thrilled that we're still here all moving forward as a team. I know it's not like that everywhere.
So going into technology, we just highlighted some of the things that we've been doing on the technology side to support our staff and students as we've had to move to an untraditional model of teaching in our classrooms. The supported platforms that we've been using within our buildings, either staff to staff or staff to student, have been Schoology at our middle and high school, Seesaw and Google Classroom at our elementaries, and Google Meet and Zoom. And you got to see some of those, the work that's being done through those platforms earlier, the picture of all the students there. I've also been able to see daily schedules that teachers have prompted their students to say, hey, post your daily schedule. And students have been able to respond through Seesaw and just provide updates in terms of what they're doing during this time, and just maintaining that contact and that collaboration. For those families who do not have access to devices or internet resources at home, to date, we've provided 117 students with iPads to use during the school closures, as well as 13 families with AT&T hotspots. Tomorrow, we are providing another opportunity for families to come in, and we still have roughly about 20 families that we're hoping to see tomorrow, so that we can provide some additional devices and hotspots there. The other thing I should mention is we've also been providing technology devices to some of our classified staff and certificated staff that may not have access to either internet or devices at home as well. And so there's been roughly about another 30 staff that have requested devices be checked out to them to go home over the break as well. So we've provided staff with those devices. Supports for our families to access during the extended closures can be found at our website, mercerislandschools.org/coronavirus. On this website, we have a survey for a form that families can fill out so that any child from age 1 to 18 can receive free meals, and they do not have to be a student within our district. Any child is eligible, and it does not require you to be part of the free and reduced lunch program. This is for all children that have the access to that. We've also been able to provide some information in regards to some emergency childcare services for our first responders and medical workers. And then we've also, as you saw previously, we've had surveys for families to request technology, as well as additional resources for extended learning during this time. In terms of our special education and our students who need assistive technology, earlier this week, we engaged in a survey to our special education staff to determine what the needs would be for those students, whether that be jelly bean switches, screen readers, or various other assistive devices. And once we get the results back from there, we'll formulate a plan to be able to distribute devices to those students so that we can provide that equitable opportunity for all of our students to access these resources.
Well, I'll turn it over to Sue Ann, who's been hard at work with our special services team.
Thank you, Fred. So we've been working very hard on following state and federal guidelines. They're not always in alignment on any given day, but we've been working hard to filter all that, and we've created about a 12-page FAQ document for our staff that not only addresses special education, but those students who have 504s as well, to make sure that our staff are on the same page, and that we're still providing services, the evaluations and creating those plans for families. Our staff have been busy doing social emotional check-ins with our families and students. We've been reviewing and updating our supplemental resources. So the things that are on the website, we've been looking at those through the lens of our students with disabilities to make sure everything's accessible and adding to those as appropriate. We're working with the gen ed teachers to provide some differentiated learning opportunities. And as we move to a more robust learning plan, really looking to our special education staff about what that continuum of learning can look like for students with different disabilities. And we're really looking at that through that equity and access lens and addressing those concerns with Ann Dreves, who has been extremely helpful with looking at that technology piece, not only for our students, but we have parents as well who are deaf, hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired, and may not be able to access the services or assist their student. So we're looking at all those pieces to make sure we're really providing resources with that equity and access in mind.
Graduation, and I know our student board director, Meghana, is continuing to probably be thinking, what does this all mean as me as a senior? And I've been assuring her, and I know she believes it, but it looks like graduation, may be looking different for many graduates across this country. Our hope, and I'll skip right to the bottom, is that we can still have a graduation ceremony. It's still under consideration. We have not canceled it. But in looking at the entire context and thinking about what Superintendent Koloski said, some of those things may not be as important as human life, and we have to keep that in perspective. But what is important is that we graduate our seniors. We need to launch them into the world, whether or not they're going on careers or college, taking a gap year. They're certainly learning a lot right now. So we will be graduating our class of 2020. We've identified students, and we have it down to the student level, which 8 pathways they may be short of meeting, which courses that they're currently not passing or that they're barely passing, and how can we support them. And teachers have been reaching out to students to help them and to have personal connections. We also know we're going to have some students who may be credit deficient. We have some students who were planning to use their spring sport as their final PE credit. And so we're already looking at all the waiver options and finding creative ways. The state has been tremendously helpful with this. We're awaiting further guidance, but our counselors, our teachers, and our administrators are at the student level, making sure that every student is on the pathway to graduation in June. A few logistics from our high school that we know have been on some of our parents and students' minds. First off, third quarter grades. We'll have official information probably on Monday for our families, but we're looking at this as likely going to be more of a progress report rather than that final grade. And we'll be thinking about the second semester as one larger continuum rather than 2 quarters within that semester. We're still finalizing what that looks like. We have options where letter grades may make sense in some cases, especially students in dual credit classes, whereas pass no credit may make sense in others. We've been reaching out to colleges and universities, and they're doing the same with many of their courses. And so I don't think it's going to be a surprise to anyone when they see that in the spring of 2020, whether you're a freshman or a senior, a sophomore or a junior, there might be some passes rather than letter grades, and I think everyone will understand why, but we're working through that. We also have news on advanced placement. Our families will get official letters next week, but there are early indications based on our original releases that the tests themselves will be based on content learned up until the school closures in mid-March. And then there'll be a shortened version of the tests as well. We are offering full refunds for students who are choosing to no longer take the assessment. But I think for the most part, people are happy that it's a shorter assessment and it will be taken at home. We also are thinking about our dual credit classes and those students enrolled in those, and we will be communicating with families. And then all of those planned events such as prom and those big milestone events for our seniors and our students in the spring, Principal Puckett and the rest of the administration team and teacher leaders, they'll be communicating with students directly about that. So moving on to there, I want to turn it over. Let me go back to you, Superintendent Kolaski, and have you kind of navigate where you want to go with operations.
So let's take a pause, perhaps, since we have all of our learning services team right here and available. President Lurie, would you like to do questions at this juncture before we move on to the other aspects of the emergency plan update?
I think that's a good idea. Do you, I can just go ahead and, I don't want to ask anyone if they're not ready yet. Is there someone that wants to go first? Just show me your hand. No, no one wants to go first. Oh, I saw David first.
Sure. I've got just a few questions. I think this is very encouraging that we are going to be doing distance learning, and I appreciate all the work and planning that is going into this. It's definitely challenging to move from a brick and mortar environment to an online environment. And I think there'll be some losses and some gains as we make this navigation. And then we'll learn from that and try and accommodate as needed. And so clearly a good plan. I appreciate we'll be giving kids activities to do, educational activities to do over spring break. Clearly with the travel order on, we're not traveling and things have been canceled in a very big way. So that's helpful that kids will have things to do. I'm curious in terms of what does a day look like for a student in terms of educational content? Clearly a full 9 to 4 day doesn't make a lot of sense, but is it 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day? Is that the neck of the woods that I'd see people looking at their screens?
I'll start and have high school, middle school, and then we can imagine elementary. I think those are aspects of it that we're still defining, Director Souza, in terms of what's that right amount. I have a neighbor across the street who attends a different school, and he's in high school, and he's been sitting in front of a computer for roughly 5 hours a day. Trying to do learning, and I've been picking his brain on that, and I'm having a hard time myself in front of the screen as much as I've been imagining that that's the best option for our students to just be rolling through their classes and trying to mimic or simulate a school day. So I think it's been less about the amount of time and more about the quality of the experience that we're trying to put in front of the learners. There are those learners who it's going to take longer than others because they may be asked to read something and it takes them longer to read. But they might be faster writers, and so they might be answering worksheets. So the whole timing component is really, I think that's part of that ongoing conversation with our teachers and staff to put that out. But it's not set so that kids have seat time. It's more about the quality of the learning at this point.
So
And I can.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go. Are you?
Yeah, this is Erin. Erin's gonna
Speak. Perfect. Sorry, we're having some technical difficulty. I just wanted to dive in and say there are multiple things that factor into what these lessons consist of, and one of it is also the impact on our students, our teachers, and their ability to deliver and design instruction. And as a parent who's experienced some online learning, with children in the home who go to a different school, not in our district, I can say it's very difficult to ensure that students can access teachers at a specific time. So that's something else that we have to look at. Is just sort of what is just in time learning, because there are a lot of pressures on both staff members and students because they're all at home together. And we're all at this point in very different environments for learning. So that's still evolving and is still a subject of negotiation between the district and MIEA. But again, as I emphasized before, it's really about defining what makes sense and keeping students' interests at the core. Students, staff, administrators, we're all trying to progress learning and meet students where they're at now, which is different than where they were a few weeks ago, because that was in their chairs, in their wobble stools, or running around our gyms. And it's just a different environment. We have to be sensitive to that. And though we provided technology so people can access, it's what is their supports at home like? What is our ability to do that? So that's still evolving, but we certainly are not looking at kids in seats for 8 hours a day, because that's just not sustainable for the students. It's not ideal. And even the recommended models that was linked in the recent OSPI thing with Kansas, their recent guidance from OSPI, the model that they reference does not contemplate huge blocks of time of online direct learning.
But I do think it's important to know that it does include non-screen time learning. So particularly at the elementary level, those recommendations for what kind of physical activity can students be doing while they're at home, what kind of art activities can they be doing, which particularly for our littlest learners, which has been a real great concern for us as well, that does take adult support to guide them through that. So a lot of what will happen, particularly for our primary grade students, is teachers supporting the adults in the home, the parents, as to here's how you can support your child as they're navigating through this as well.
Donna, can I jump in and just add a little something? One of the things that the elementary team was thinking about in crafting the lessons for this coming week was definitely trying to provide a balance of online accessibility, and then really making sure there were opportunities for engagement and activities that did not require the use of technology, in order to ensure that everybody who doesn't have a printer could potentially have access. We're going to be printing copies off of every handout or downloadable piece of information and have them available at our lunch handouts or lunch distributions so that families could pick them up as packets. And then the way that the schedule is set up, it's not like at 9 o'clock you're going to do this and at 10 o'clock you're going to do this. It's really by content area. And so based on a given student's interest or bandwidth at a certain time, there are opportunities for parents and students to select and choose, what they're going to tackle at each point. And there are timelines given as to about how long this particular activity would take based on the family needs.
I have a question for Jamie. You just mentioned like that they're not going to be like specific times of day, like do this at 9, do this at 10. What's the thinking on the elementary school level in terms of, will there be sort of like a class check-in, sort of FaceTime with each other, recess time? I don't know, because I know for sure my youngest is really missing that.
I know the details of exactly what that looks like are still being worked out. But teachers, just like the kiddos, like they cannot wait to engage with their students. So if we don't have it completely fleshed out, we know that's a part of what they're going to be doing every week, is connecting for that social emotional connection, and making sure that they understand that the teacher's there for them, that they see each other. And I think you saw the video or the screenshot earlier of Stephanie John Lewis and her students today doing that check-in. And you could see all their faces, like to a T, were lit up and smiling and excited. And I can say, like for my personal children, right, they can't wait. They're craving interactions with peers and they just want to see faces.
Thanks.
Okay.
Brian?
Oh,
Tam, sorry. Tam, you went off. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So, as an educator myself, I just want to recognize and acknowledge how hard it is actually to quantify everything that you're teaching into what you guys have done so far, and being very clear and distilling the most important content for our students to learn. It is actually easier to walk into a classroom and just talk versus taking all that and then putting it in very clear-cut ways and offering different levels of opportunities for students to hit all those, differentiated learning. So I really appreciate that, and I recognize that is actually a lot of work for those who haven't done this kind of curriculum building. I also really am encouraged to hear that, Fred, that you talk about that you guys are constantly reviewing and reflecting on how you're doing, and this is evolving. I think that's really important for the community to hear, that this is a work in progress, and that we will continually reflect on what we're doing and how do we continue to get better. So that was really wonderful to hear. I'm also similar to what Maggie Tai is saying, is like how do we balance this kind of asynchronous learning, which I think is very important, because right now we actually have a lot of students who are in daycare or childcare who can't really be online maybe at the same time. So the way that Mercer Island has set it up allows students to still be engaged when they're able to. But how do we balance that between, making sure that the students have an opportunity to connect with teachers so that they can process, right? I'm seeing the books that they're reading and things that they're doing is really great. But then it's also nice to get students together to process, the book, and what do they think about it. So kind of like Jamie, you're talking about having that balance and working towards that moving forward. And finally, I think one thing I want us to start thinking about is, as we're in this process of reviewing and reflecting, how do we make sure that during this time that we are making sure that the students who don't check in, right, how are we reaching out to them? Because sometimes in the classroom, when they don't show up, it's more of a visual, yeah, you didn't show up, I need to, there's an absence or a tardy. We can be on top of that. But during this time, sometimes the students that need our help the most, it's easier just to, kind of disappear. And so as we're thinking about this process, think of also a way to check in with those students to make sure that we engage them earlier, sooner than later.
One of the engagement to that point, our new attendance liaison and coordinator actually starts Monday. Ellis Hazard, who has been in that position right before all of this happened, he took a position with the county, and he's been doing a great job. And so good time, bad time, I don't even know, but this new person is going to enter in not knowing any differently than this. And so I already have training set up along with Nick Wold with our partners with King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. And we'll be hitting the ground running on that, Director Din, making sure that students who we already know who are having a hard enough time engaging, we reach out to them. We know that they're on top of our mind, but you're right. We have to look out for those who aren't re-engaging with us and figure out how to break down some of those barriers.
Brian?
Sure. Thank you for the update. I appreciate it. And I just wanted to maybe touch on a couple things. First, I just want to recognize, as we all recognize, that this is a pivotal moment in history. That as far as I'm concerned in my life, this is the largest hill that I'm going to climb. And for many of us, that's the same. And so this is presenting challenges for our families, for our staff, for our children, for our communities. And it's a trying time. So I really appreciate everyone trying to find some grace and some patience during this time to afford kindness and support to each other. And so to that, I want to say thank you to the staff for all of their hard work, to our students for being patient, and for those community members who are really working with us and collaborating to help provide opportunities. And then specifically for administrators, I know that this is a really difficult time. There's navigating shifting legal directions and guidance from regional, state, and national levels, and that guidance is changing almost daily sometimes. So the fact that you continue to work with the staff and families to provide educational opportunities for all students, and your continued importance on meeting every child where they are, I think is a gift to this community. And so I just want to say thank you for your hard work.
Meghana, do you have any questions?
I do have a question, but first, like a thank you. Students, as far as I know, are very appreciative of the work you guys are doing. My one main question was clarifying, as learning rolls out March 30th forward, is it going to be graded? Is that going to be part of the second semester grades that students are concerned about, or is this still kind of optional but highly encouraged?
Aaron, I'll let you start with some of those pieces and then I'll weigh in as well, unless you want me to start. Or Donna.
Sorry, navigating. Go ahead.
All right. To answer your question, I mean, the current guidance is that for going forward, there will not be grades. It'll be more of a pass-fail. That's what's recommended in from OSPI. It's to honor student work, and that is one of the things that's recommended. My guess is that that is the model we are going to, but we're still trying to figure that out. And I just want to emphasize that the concept from OSPI is that we have a plan by March 30th. It's not necessarily that everything is starting March 30th. This is really going to be a growing model. So we ask patience from both the community and from our students as we work this. Everyone is really dedicated to getting you to the end game, right? To getting you to graduation, but to getting every student from our pre-K kiddos all the way through our adult transition to the next stage, whatever that is. And so we're working together to, did all staff at all levels, as I said before, working together to figure out what's the best plan. But my expectation at this point in time, just based on the guidance, is that best practice is not going to be necessarily to have grades assigned and more of a pass-fail, but there will be some situations where there will have to be grades. And I'm going to lean over to both Fred, Jamie, or Donna on that, but there are some classes just for graduation requirement reasons that may require grades. And I think all those classes where people are doing like Running Start or through, I'm going to get the wrong name, but the college and high school classes, I think those are still getting grades. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. But I said it's still evolving. There's still discussions between the union and the district as to what that really is going to look like. But just be prepared. It's going to be a plan for the 30th, not full online school.
Also, Megan, I think that question that you asked is something similar to what I've heard from parents as well, because you noticed that we've called this engage, because one of the things we've heard is students got the impression when we went off that this closure meant no more school, I don't have to do this, this is optional. And I can tell you, I've definitely heard from parents, could you please reel that back in or reel out something that encourages our students to continue to be motivated to learn. And so, yes, we absolutely want to have engaging activities that encourage our students to engage, encourage them to be curious and want to keep their mind occupied and learning and moving forward. So not giving you a set answer because, as it was stated, it's still being flushed out exactly what the feedback is going to look like, but encouraging everyone to definitely be checking in on Schoology and keeping themselves as active learners. Fred?
No, I think that's true. I mean, the conversations I've been in with teachers and with principals have really talked about this idea that there are even assignments that took place, or there were assessments that took place before the closure, that some students, either because they were ill themselves and just out of school, or weren't in school, weren't able to take them. And so what does that look like in an online setting now? Because that assessment was different. And then you take a look at, well, how do you assess learning in this setting? And we already have teachers who are asking for new professional development. What are some new ways? And I hope that what we start emphasizing as a system, and we've been talking about this for years, is it's about the learning and not about the grade. And this might be an opportunity for us to really try that out and to say, how do we engage in learning for the learning's sake, rather than trying to chase the A or chase those extra points, but rather I'm going to do the learning and then I'm going to get a chance to redo it so that I can demonstrate that I know something. I don't know where it's all going to go, but there's these opportunities within this challenge that give me great hope that we're going to come out of this stronger and better as educators and as a system.
Thank you.
Yeah. Building on Brian or Director Janini Upton's piece there, I think I saw some of the principals in the audience before, and they're probably going to bed now. They're exhausted, but you know, they when we go to principal school, no one taught us how to open a childcare. You know, no one put those. That wasn't on any of the syllabus. I guarantee you that. And so some of our principals have been working hard on projects that we have no training in, really, in terms of that. But what we do have training in is how to work with students and kids. And if that's the common denominator, we can build anything. It's taken them away from things they love to do, to try to be with their staff or engage in different ways. And they're hungry now that we have some of these set up. And I know that Tony and Ty and others will talk about it in a minute, but they're excited. They're as excited as the teachers to get back involved in some of the teaching and learning, because we've been doing a lot of different, we've been using other skill sets in other ways to build this, to build this response plan. But it's getting excited because it's starting to feel like we're heading back towards mission critical, and that's student learning.
Paul, I can't see you. Do you have any questions or comments?
I'm not gonna lie, Megan stole my question a little bit. I did. Yeah, because I was just wondering about like the grading too, and then just like the learning in general moving forward. I mean, because like with the grading, it's kind of hard because some students might not just like adhere to the material better like when it's online, or like, for example, I mean, I would just like, if students miss class or just like are struggling with the online learning, it's like kind of unfortunate, like if they're being graded super harshly, that they're being punished for that. But then it's also like, the thing with grading is like Dr. Rundle explained, like it I mean, we want to incentivize the learning over the grade itself, but it also kind of gets students to like pay attention more, in my opinion. But then I also kind of had a question, like I know it showed a little bit of scheduling with like the different days in the classes, like in the middle school, like I had like on Monday was special education, Tuesday language arts, math. In the future, do you think it's like foreseeable that we'd go to like a full 7-period day, like it just extends, or like with attendance and everything, or is it going to be more like a few days a week for each class?
Fred, do you want to jump in, or do you want me?
I can. I think that this is part of that learning and learning forward. Paul, in terms of 7 periods a day where you would have your normal day and you just kind of come in and out. If you had an off period, second period, you'd be off for a while and then come back in. I'm envisioning that right now as an educator. I'm trying to get my head around that, but I think there's many other smart people, your teachers, principals, and others who I think our first step is we need to get really serious in our engagement, and then talk about how that's all going to work out based on what we're learning. So I'm sure you, like me over here in Issaquah, you have friends and maybe in other schools who are experiencing different things. We're learning from those. I'm seeing some things that aren't working so well for the learner. And I don't want to replicate some of those. So it's hard to say what that foreseeable future is. I think right now we've got a plan for next week. We've got a plan to keep some engagement going over spring break, although teachers won't be doing office hours or whatnot during that period of time. When we come back on the 13th, we will have thought things through even more, and we'll have more for you. So I think your feedback as students, I would say to you and Meghana and your colleagues, your peers, we want to hear from you as well. We know we've certainly heard from families, some who are very happy about what we've done and some who are frustrated, but the students, we need to hear from your experience too and learn from you.
Yeah, I know, and I could actually, I mean, some of my teachers this week, they've been pretty good about it, have reached out. We've met as a class with like Schoology conference calls and stuff. And it's actually worked fairly well. I mean, the technology, like the Schoology conference call didn't work as well as this is, like Zoom. But I mean, it was pretty good being able to like actually hear kids talk to each other. And it worked well for a couple classes. Like we didn't really go over any material, but in Spanish, for example, like we were able to have like kind of have conversations between different kids. And I think, and I honestly was kind of surprised by how effective it was so far. And so, I mean, I just think, yeah, I agree. Just watching it grow and kind of going on like a week to week basis. But yeah.
Am I on mute? I have a question. I just have a question. I think this is sort of like a Fred and Sue Ann question, kind of. And I realize that this whole process is just kind of getting rolling and getting some momentum now. But I'm wondering what you can tell parents about what the current thinking is about how kids are going to be able to do this sort of like alternative or distance learning if they have like executive functioning challenges or dyslexia or other types of learning disabilities. Like looking at that lovely plan from the art teacher at the middle school, I was looking at it and thinking, there are a lot of kids that can't necessarily read this, block of text and be like, oh, okay, this is what I'm doing on Monday. This is what I'm doing on Tuesday. I know you won't have anything in place yet, but what are you thinking in terms of kind of moving forward for those kinds of kids?
I'll start off and then kick it to you, Sue Ann. I think first off, it's always important to remember that all students are gen ed students first. And so thinking our first piece is, how can we have what we're developing from our core teachers be as inclusive and equitable as possible? And some of that's having conversations with colleagues who are speech language pathologists or are special educators. Tomorrow, that's what our special education team will be doing with the elementary model, is they're going to be picking through it and figuring out how to recommend some of those changes. So the first step is, how do we predict as many things on the front end? But then I think you're absolutely right. From there, we know we're still going to have students who may struggle with some of that. And that's where I'm going to toss it to you, Sue Ann.
Sure. So some of you know, I'm a parent of a deaf and blind child. And so I live what you're talking. There's no way my deaf blind son who uses sign language is going to get an online learning. So that's definitely first and foremost in my mind. And our staff are working hard at looking at every student that we serve and thinking about what they need. And the staff have been in constant contact with me about what that might look like. And our goal this week is to really contact our parents and make sure they have access to the materials, and then really talk about what their student might need. And then we're designing that plan. So we're kind of building the plan as we move, but the parents will be involved in that plan. And we are working towards that inclusivity piece. And as we think about online learning, I'm really trying to expand the thinking of the staff, because it may, not every student can access online. So I'm really using something Donna had said earlier about learning forward, and I'm trying to work on what that continuum looks like. So a learning forward continuum, which includes some online learning. It might be some hybrid things in the future, depending on the governor's proclamation. So We're just working on a continuum because that's what special ed is.
That's great. Thank you very much for that answer.
I'm looking at board directors, seeing if there's any follow-up questions. And then I just wanted to say I'm really impressed with the information that we're getting today. I know that I've had a bit more of a window to a lot of it than other board members, and then also the community have gotten. But I was not expecting this level of specificity, and clearly people have been working really hard. I just want to emphasize that. That as great as any plan is, we are going to fail. There's going to be things that don't work. And I know that you guys have built that into your planning in terms of assessing and reassessing and reassessing. And so I just want to encourage, I know that there's been some comments that we've received via email that we're not, the administration and the board isn't receptive to input. And I hope that that makes me sad, because I think that we've been really expressing we want to hear from students, we want to hear from parents, what's working, what's not working. We know there's going to be lots of things that don't work for some, that are going to work well for others, and vice versa. So this is new for all of us. One of the things that I'm really hopeful about all of this is I think it was Fred who said, we're learning that, we can do things in really different ways. The fact that we're waiving our state assessments, where so many of us aren't big fans of testing, and that it takes away from learning in the classroom, and maybe we won't feel the need to go back to it. And that some colleges are already waiving SATs, ACTs for admissions for the class of 2021. So those things are already happening. And, because we now have to adapt, I think it's going to give us a really great opportunity to kind of look at what we always feel like we have to do, and think maybe we don't really have to do it the way that we've always done it. So just trying to look on the glass half full there, and just very grateful for all of the hard work that's clearly been happening. So I know, unless I'm looking to see if anyone else has any questions, and I'm not seeing anyone go off of mute. So I will pass it back to Donna for further information.
Thank you. And really a huge thank you to our staff as we do navigate this very different way of education and of learning. And we really couldn't get to where we are without our partnership with MIEA. They have just dove in with us. As several mentioned, our teacher groups have really dove in, as have our MIEA partnership. So in thanking them, as well as all of our team who are here still with us as well. So we're going to move into just to quickly update the board and the community on some of the pieces that are embedded in our emergency plan that have come out of the whole governor's order. So we're putting this under the operations category. Facilities, we've had to do some more work there. Childcare, which we've spoken about a little bit, a quick update on nutrition, and then moving forward now, as we're in this 3-week of closure, Executive Director Bergstrom has been now sitting in very long conferences with WASBO about anticipated fiscal impacts as we look to the future, as we learn forward. Go ahead, Andres. So facilities first, and you probably saw that Tony Kuhn, our Director of Maintenance and Operations, is on this meeting because I want to make sure that he's available to answer any questions you might have. So very recently, as you all know, the governor issued a stay home, stay safe order. And as soon as that occurred, and working in partnership with the city of Mercer Island, we basically had to close all of our facilities. We had already, of course, buttoned up our schools pretty much, but we were hearing from our community and working in partnership with the city last Friday. We also had to take the necessary actions to close all of our outdoor areas as well. Tony was out this past weekend, both Saturday and again on Sunday, putting up signage. You think it would be a simple piece, but again, we've had some challenges. I know that Tony has had to replace the signs more than once on several of the public spaces. We really ask the community's partnership in really looking to stay safe and stay home and really follow the social distancing mandate that the governor has put forward. We have secured our facilities, but we don't have the capacity to monitor if they're being used when we've closed them. We do have a great partnership with our MIPD, and Tony's been in constant communication with them, and they are supporting us as best they can. Our stadium, which frequently has fobs that give some community members access, is now not accessible. The other thing we've had to navigate is essential personnel. And so really our staff, other than our custodial, which are considered essential personnel, and our administrators, have been directed that if they need to enter a building, they need to schedule it first with the site administrator. And we have to remind everyone, please do not bring others with you. We understand completely that a teacher might want to get into their classroom to get something that they need, particularly as they're working through some lesson planning and some resources, and we want them to have that access, but we want them to be safe too. And so we are asking that they communicate with their site administrator and don't bring anyone with you when you come. Our phones are still being answered. It's a little bit tricky, and Tony's team has done a great lift in sort of diverting our phones to still be answered by staff. Hopefully, as soon as we, hopefully our customer service is as good as it was. I know sometimes they're probably going to messages, and our receptionist and other secretaries are having to route those calls to the right place. But we were able to secure several more cell phones that allow our secretarial support to still answer the phones and then get those messages out to where they need to be. Tony, do you have anything else to add to this facilities piece?
I don't think so, Donna. I think you nailed it. Like I said, I do want to shout out to the city of Mercer Island. They've been a great partner. The code enforcement officers really been helping us out, trying to keep people off the sites. You know, it's amazing what people will go through to access areas that they're not supposed to access. I scratch my head on a daily basis as they're actually removing the materials that we've put up to keep them away from things for their own safety. So anyhow, no, I think that's it. The guys are all working hard. We've kind of went into a revised spring break mode, doing a lot of extra cleaning and maintenance, and so we're plugging away.
Are there any questions on facilities? Did kind of change since the last time we talked because of the much stricter mandate?
Any questions from any directors? I'm not seeing any. Okay. No, go ahead with our next piece.
So next is nutrition. And this again has been, this was hit the ground running. There's a great picture of our team. Note the hand sanitizer on the table. We have two of our wonderful Chartwell's employees serving lunches every day. We've averaged about 150 meals. As we've said before, we are serving all children. We do ask for pre-orders just because it does save food on food waste, because we do have extras, but when the pre-orders are done, it really helps us to make sure we're getting what people want into their hands. We are providing lunches, but we are considering breakfast within the next month, especially as we anticipate that the demand might increase as this health crisis lasts longer. And we will be providing lunches to the childcare when it opens at Northwood. Ty, anything on that one? You note in the slide it says that we will be providing lunches during spring break. This model is based on the federal summer feed model, which does include feeding students when there's not school in session. So that's why we're going to be serving during spring break. Ty?
I just want to give Carol and her team kudos for the work that they put in every day. Not just that they're coming in and making the lunches for these families, but Carol's putting in a lot of effort. I mean, if you can go in and take a look at some of the options that she puts out, I mean, there are days where she's trying to put out a hot meal and not just a sack lunch. So she was really thinking about the welfare and benefit of these kids in our community, and putting in a lot of effort to make sure that they are not just fed, but fed well. And that it's a little something extra in this time of uncertainty for them. As we mentioned, we do ask that you pre-order. Doesn't necessarily require pre-order, and that we are looking at potentially adding breakfast within the next month as demand increases. As the economy gets a little more uncertain, we do anticipate that demand will increase. Additionally, sorry, my brain just slipped. But I think things are going well. Carol, do you have anything you want to add?
I don't think so. I think you pretty much covered it. I have submitted paperwork to OSPI for approval to do breakfast, so I'm waiting on that. And then also just trying to secure the items we need for breakfast. So you can imagine there's a lot of people ordering the same thing right now. So
Yeah.
I want to make sure we have a good amount of supply before we even start. So, and what the breakfast would be, it would just all go in one bag, and it's lunch for today and breakfast for tomorrow. So it's something they can take home, so they have something right when they wake up in the morning.
Yeah, that is one consideration concern that we do have, is the integrity of the supply chain, and because we do order food from large vendors, every district in the state is going through this right now. So trying to make sure that we are not just thinking about what we're going to be doing for the next few days, but planning out ahead, so that we make sure that we have supplies on hand, and that we actually have someone at the building to receive the supplies, to make sure that it gets all logged and stocked away and is secure. So Carol's done an incredible amount of work, and great benefit for our kids.
Thank you.
Any questions on the nutrition program from the board?
So I'll kind of set you up here. So my understanding is that that one does not need to qualify for free and reduced lunch in order to benefit. Right?
Correct.
And that the
That's
district
correct.
is getting compensated for every lunch that is delivered, right?
Yes.
Correct. This is open to any child from 1 to 18. Doesn't even have to live in the district, really. They can come from anywhere, but since every single district is doing it, there's not really a need for them to do that. And it is fully reimbursable to the district.
So if someone wants to help, if parents want to help their child get back on, like our school day as we start more and more distance learning, is this something that they could do? And then not that they're obligated to, but they could always make a donation to the foundation if they don't want, if they're uncomfortable with getting a lunch, but it's also a way that kids could stay connected to the school. Is that something does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. And in terms of being connected to the school and having something, a tangible physical reminder that they're part of this larger community, it would be a great way. And they'd probably see friends at the pickup spot. I mean, it is something that we could and should be considering.
We do need to remind everyone to please observe social distancing. We have to encourage that. And there was also some guidance from OSPI this morning. They finally got some answers back there was a lot of concerns in many of the districts of the usual procedure is that the food service workers have to see the child who is having the lunch, and that has now been waived. So a parent who maybe the child is sick or maybe they don't want to expose the whole family to come out from their stay home, stay safe, they can then pick up the lunch without our food service workers having to see the actual child as well.
Yes, that's new. That's new today.
Yep. Ever changing, ever evolving.
Ever changing. Every day there's an OSPI call.
Yep. And that's really good to hear. So Carol, I think your lunch is a lot better than my lunches that I'm making for my kids right now. And I know that I think sometimes we forget that in our community, we have this perception that we're all affluent, and that actually kind of getting food for this kind of thing is actually stigmatizing. And I know that for a lot of the Asian folks, asking for food, in this way is not normal. And so just recognizing that, and how do we make sure we destigmatize this whole process? And I know that my husband, he's a dentist, but he's forced to be home for the next 2 months. And we're not like in financial trouble. But I will tell you that it is actually very hard to think of new food to cook for our boys every day. And the other day they had bacon and French fries because we just didn't know what they were eating anymore. And so I think it is, as we are going further along in this process, that we should encourage, and parents who are watching our meeting today, that we should maybe once or twice a week start to model that it's okay to, as a community, to kind of have a little bit of respite of not having to cook lunch, right? And like Deborah was saying, how this could actually be a very collective kind of community sharing of meals that, so we can kind of destigmatize. So I was thinking, even like how board members, can start out and ordering food, not because of my own personal, lack of cooking ability, but, how do we start just to let everybody know that it is not bad to start using this, so that others who do feel stigmatized to normalize it. But I love the fact that OSPI has reduced the barrier of bringing children there, because my mom is watching my sister's kids. She's a pharmacist, so she has a baby and a toddler, and she's not going to be able to go grab food for them. And if I did, I wouldn't have been able to. So so I'm glad that's happening. And I hope we start to continue to plan to make it, to reduce as much barriers as we can.
We would love to have everyone come and have lunch, but we cannot allow people to sit and have the lunch. It is an absolute grab and go. We cannot encourage, and we'd love to see you, but we can't encourage people to kind of hang out and have a picnic, so to speak, together at the pickup places.
I had just wanted to say, I heard an expert talking today about the notion that maybe we should, instead of social distancing, be using the term physical distancing, because the social connection is so important. Like Deborah was just saying, my daughter, who's 7, had a play date yesterday with one of her first grade classmates. And at one point she had my phone for this FaceTime play date, and she went running through the kitchen, and I was like, what do you need? What's going on? She said, we're having snack. So she got a snack and her friend got a snack, and they sat and they just ate snack together like they would at school. So like, remember the physical distancing, but you know, we hope we still have those social bonds.
I wanted to answer, Tam, we have quite a few parents that have come through that, and we get people from all a wider array of a wide range of economical status. And a lot of the moms and some of the dads have mentioned to us that it's just a nice break in the day. It's a good break for the day. It gives the kids some normalcy because now they know it's lunchtime. They come to school. They get to see some people they know. We've had a couple principals stop by, so they've got to see the kids. We've had a couple teachers that have come with their kids, so they get to see a few of their students. So it's been a good thing. It really has, to keep the kids just to, you know, hopefully we give them a smile for the day. And they've liked our crazy hats the past couple days, and we've had a couple of them come in with their own crazy hats today, which was fun. So it's been a good thing.
Yeah, thank you. I agree.
Any other questions on nutrition? So let's move now to childcare. And as Fred mentioned earlier, this has probably been the biggest mountain to move because this is very different work than any of us have engaged in. Many of our surrounding districts were able to hand this mandate off to a contracted entity. That was our first inclination, and we were not able to do that. They were not able to, our usual provider was not able to take this on based on a lot of different pieces, but many of the same challenges that it's proven to be for us as well. So here's just some bits and pieces for it, but before I go into that, I cannot say enough about our principals who have dove in and done this. I immediately, when it came on, I said, Ty, go with this. And I know that sometimes he's felt like hurting this wonderful group of cats, but they have come together so beautifully and so marvelously, and our nurses have been absolutely phenomenal because this has been one of those things that has changed every single day. We think we have the parameters for it, and then a new memo comes out from public health saying, oh, and by the way, now you need to do this as part of the check-in. And our nurses have absolutely been phenomenal. We've had a couple of teachers who jumped in to help because they had some experience in childcare. It is going to be at Northwood. Our plan is to serve a maximum of 24. The ratio of students to children to adults is going to be 8 to 2. And we're going to have, it's the biggest challenge of this is these are going to be children. And as Director Tucker noted, we have to have physical distancing with 8 kids in a room with 2 adults. And so that's a huge challenge. Anyone who's worked with 5-year-olds would know that. We cannot mix the groups. So we've actually labeled them as families. The team decided that calling them families was a great way to move forward, but we cannot mix them. So they can't eat lunch together. They can't be on the playground together. They can't even share balls and toys and things. So we've had to account for all of that in the planning and the setup of this. It's going to have staggered entry times because we don't want a group congregating at the entrance to drop students off, or even at the end of the day when picking them up. The stringent guidelines from the Department of Health are for a daily check-in. The kids will come in, the parents will have to answer some questions, we will have temperatures taken, hands washed, and many other protocols that, again, there was a couple things that when I jumped into the meeting, I can't remember if it was yesterday or today, they were talking about there was new guidelines, so now we have to add some questions to our daily questionnaire of parents. Cleaning protocols for staff. everything has to be cleaned. So part of what we did here was say, we're not going to share any of the toys. When the kids go out to play and they're using outdoor toys, they won't be able to be on the equipment because obviously it's closed. And there's no possible way to clean that structural equipment, but we will be cleaning the outdoor balls and the jump ropes or anything else that they're going to be using outside. At this time, we are staffing with our classified and some certificated folks, but again, we're going to move forward as best we can as long as we can maintain staffing. We have to remember that this is a health crisis, and staff have to be healthy as well, and their families have to be healthy to be able to support this. We are starting our training for staff tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Basically around the health and the cleaning protocols and kind of showing them the facility. And we're doing that in several sessions so that we are going to be able to practice physical distancing. I love that new term. Thank you for sharing it while we're working through this training. Our intent today is to open on Monday, the 30th. Ty, what did I miss?
Oh, as Superintendent Klosky stated, this has been a Herculean challenge. We have pulled together resources from multiple districts. We've built our own procedure manuals. We've rebuilt and built and rebuilt again, clean procedures and check-in procedures, staffing, trying to figure out staffing for each of the classrooms and how do we make it work. It's just been incredible amount of work, and every single one of the people on this team, all the elementary principals, we had Principal Miller from the middle school, we had instructional coaches, it's just been this wonderful group to work with that has just really pulled together and created something that will we think be quite a stable and sustainable program. The work that they put in will be able to move us forward. If this extends longer, we will be able to sustain it based on their wonderful work.
I think, sorry, Ty, I just wanted to remind everyone too, is this was one of the governor's mandates initially when we first when King County schools and the 3 counties were closed. This was one of his mandates, and it was a mandate for, as a last resort, childcare for healthcare professionals and first responders. I know that some have reached out to ask if we will be expanding to others that have been defined as essential personnel. We really don't have the capacity at this time. We have coordinated somewhat with Boys and Girls Club. They've struggled as just everyone has with these new guidelines. And we are referring over to them to see if they have space, but we have focused on healthcare professionals who are serving our community in our hospitals and healthcare facilities, and our first responders have been our top priority. We've actually had to go through a verification process for the families who've applied for this childcare. Any questions? Or Ty, did you have anything else to add before we go to questions?
I'm good.
I'm not seeing any questions.
I have a question, 2 questions. So are you?
Sorry, I missed you.
Oh, sorry. So are you guys organize them in groups by age, or how is this family pod organized? And also during the day, because the concern, I can see a potential concern is that, you know, if these children are not having access to their computers, or, you know, when they go home, they might have to, you know, then do the learning later. So while they're there, are they given, you know, access to, you know, whatever they need in order to, and if, I guess if the people there can help them through the curriculum that is age appropriate.
So that won't be something that will be able to occur. There will be some, I know that Andrea's team has assigned some iPads to each of the classrooms that are going to be used for each of the groups, because the group does have to stay together. That is in the regulations. They have to stay together pretty much all day. Once they come in, they are in that group and they stay in that group. So the groups have been keeping some, if there's 2 children in a family, it's keeping them together as a family, because that also is a recommendation, so that we're not spreading, potentially spreading the virus even further. So there could be a variety of ages in a group. So will there be educational experiences? No, this is childcare. So it doesn't mean that we're not going to have some craft activities and other kinds of childcare activities that normally occur when childcare is offered during spring break or other times. But at this point, we have not worked through logistics of what does the educational program for these children look like. It's probably going to, that goes back to the flexibility of the time and, you know, parents being able to work with that, or other adults in the home being able to support the children when they're at home. But the adults that are in the classroom are really there to support for the health and safety of the students.
Okay.
Any other questions? Not seeing any, so keep on going.
So this is Ty's waiting for the very end. You know, this is some of the conversations that are starting to occur now as this becomes an ongoing long-term concern. We've started to have conversations as financial officers and superintendents as to the short-term issues when it comes to revenues and our expectations with that. And then long-term, particularly as we look out, we are really technically in our budget planning phase for the 2020-21 school year. And so how is all of this potentially going to have impact on that? Ty?
So what we've heard from OSPI and from the state is that right now they anticipate the state apportionment, the state funding to continue. They're going to be using the March enrollment counts as the basis for continued payment. So that's good. As long as we can continue on consistent state payments, that's something that we should hold on to. In terms of local taxes, we received the majority of our local taxes in April and October. I'm anticipating the April tax collection to be pretty consistent with what we're anticipating. It's been several months of escrow collections and tax payments that will be dispersed to us all at once. So most of that was collected prior to the outbreak pandemic. October is going to be a different story. And that's kind of the outlook that the state is also considering, is that over the next several quarters, we're going to start seeing reduced tax collections from businesses, reduced sales tax collections from lack of commerce. The other consideration is that as people start losing their jobs, they're going to stop paying mortgages and put those on hold, and tax payments, property taxes could take a hit. So longer term considerations moving into the next school year is the potential of significant reductions in funding. So we've been given now that we're starting to move past the initial hierarchy of needs of taking care of food and shelter for first responding kids. the kids of first responder families, and getting some educational content out. Now we need to start taking a look at how are we going to build out for next year. And one of the things that I took away from the meeting this morning was a comment about essentially districts should take a hard look at what resources they're planning to take in to the next fiscal year. What are you essentially don't count on having a whole lot of eggs in your basket. So we're going to start taking a look at where we are fiscally for this year. I'm doing a deep dive with my staff tomorrow. We're going to start taking a look at enrollment forecasts again. One of the considerations and one of the things we've been hearing is we're considering is are a lot of our families going to be moving to private schools? Are we going to see an increase in homeschooling? Are we going to see a lot of families that are economically negatively impacted withdrawing from homeschools and enrolling in our school district? So there's a lot of things that we need to consider in terms of enrollment, and we also need to take a look at how are we staffing. We have a very rich and well-staffed staffing model. And is that going to be sustainable in a long-term economic recession? There was an article that was shared with me today talking about how most district financial officers were not, in most regions across the country, were probably not serving during the last Great Recession, during the start of the Great Recession about 10 years ago. And so there's a whole lot of new learning that has to happen for financial leaders. So we're going to be taking a look, and we're going to be networking over the next several weeks as to what are other people looking at in terms of their economic outlook and their staffing plans and their enrollment forecasts. So, questions?
Brian, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, because I've kind of been looking a year down the road to where this might be impacting us, and the model of basic education and enhanced education and all of that. So it sounds as if we're going to have an economic gap that we may need to bridge in the next year. And fortunately, April 28th was scheduled. I'm not sure if they're moving forward with the Mercer Island Schools Foundation for the Breakfast of Champions, which was meant as the launch of the new Spring for Ed campaign. But I think if everyone keeps an eye on the Schools Foundation and what's happening with that campaign right now, this could be part of what helps to move us through, which is exactly what Bridge the Gap did 10 years ago. So thank you, Ty, for keeping the ship moving in the right direction and navigating these difficult economic waters.
So, other question? Oh, David.
I know there's a stimulus package that was passed to the Senate, at least. No money was allocated for school districts and municipalities or states, for that matter. Is there any expectation we might see something like that coming around that might help bridge this gap?
In terms of short-term relief, because the declaration of emergency has been issued by the federal government that opens FEMA dollars, I started the application process to become an eligible agency for FEMA relief today. So we'll be filling out those. We've set up all the necessary budget tracking codes that will be tracking everything, every expenditure that's related to this in terms of staffing and supplies and services and whatever we can find to essentially throw at it, we'll be tracking and putting it on the application. There's not a lot of guarantees when it comes to FEMA dollars. That was big bold letters at the beginning of the application. In terms of funding for some of the programs that we're going to have to be taking on, like daycare, there is some funding that's available from the federal government, but those are usually coming in through Title I. We could apply Title IV ECAP funding, the Early Childhood Education Access. We don't get a whole lot of that. And most of the money that we do has already been allocated and spent for other programs. So we're looking to see what we can do in terms of those fundings in the short term. In the long term, I don't know.
We also, there has been some state dollars allocated. Superintendent Reichtel has spoken about those, but we don't know exactly how that will look either. Director D'Souza, he's referenced them, but how that's going to roll out to districts, again, we don't have any details of that. We do know that I believe opening up tomorrow is going to be an I-grant that is really based around our plan moving forward with all of these mandates that we've been given. How dollars will tie to that hasn't been specified, but those are something that we're absolutely going to be tracking and going after as well. As soon as we started incurring costs when the virus began, Tony's crews were in schools on weekends, so we were accruing some staffing costs. We immediately started tracking those so that we can go back to hopefully be able to recoup some of those costs. Some of it is a bit of a wait and see, but we're being really diligent about looking at every avenue we can go to recoup the costs that have come from this, and what will both the federals, you're right, didn't see much coming locally from that, but then again, there are some state dollars that may help service as well.
I guess as we understand, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, to Ty's point of many of the CFOs not being in the positions during the last economic time, there were some of us who were in public education during the last economic downturn, and wasn't working so much in the financial side of the house, but was working in the human resources side of the house, which is where the greatest impacts unfortunately do happen.
Yeah, it will be, I think, useful for the board to be kept informed as we learn more about how large the deficit is going to be, and even thinking about what you're planning for, even if we don't know what the exact amount is. I think being conservative in the plans is probably going to serve us well, for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
I had an extra just quick question in looking at recoup maybe some federal or tap into some federal funds. Even though the program's not really big right now, the fact that we're distributing hotspots and technology, could that qualify us for any E-rate funds?
We do participate in E-rate currently. So we should be able to potentially reap some of that rewards. So.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions on that lovely news from Ty? We have one last slide because we knew that Ty's part would be a little bit of a downer. And so we wanted to just finish with, again, the continuity of learning. We're calling it Engage MI. And this is going to post on the website. So we encourage you to click on some of these links of some of the examples of our leaders reaching out to our students and their staffs to make these connections. You know, students are the priority, and we believe in educating the whole child. And this is super challenging times, and our staff across the board have stepped up and are missing our kids and really wanting to serve them. And on that note, I I was shared this video of Ms. Jernigan from Island Park, and it was the end of a long, hard day, and I'm pretty stiff-backed, but I was at home having stared at my computer for probably 10 hours, it felt like, and this one brought tears to me. So I think she has agreed to allow me to share it with all of you and post it on here. So Andrews, would you mind playing her message to her children that was posted on Seesaw? Oh, sound. Andrews, can you get sound?
Is the sound not working? I have it up.
It's very faint.
But I've never learned to play an instrument, so I've decided to learn to play the ukulele. And I thought I would share my song with you. I only know one song so far, and it has 3 chords, and I'd like to play it for you. And here we go. This is me trying something new, just like I hope you're trying something new at home too. Here we go. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Saying don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Rose up this morning, smiling at the rising sun. 3 little birds by my doorstep, singing a sweet song, melody pure and true. Singing, this is my message for you. Saying don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Saying don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. That's it, mistakes and all. So I'm trying something new. I hope you'll try something new. I would love to hear from you. Feel free to email me. Your parents have my email. To email me through my school email. And I would love to write back to you. If you want to write to me, I'll write it back to you. Keep practicing what you already know. Try to learn something new and help as much as you can while you're at home. I will send you a new video soon. Bye. Oh, and play this again if you want to sing the song with me. Bye. See you soon.
So any further questions on anything on the emergency planning and operations update? Fred, any final thoughts? I saw you pop up there.
I think Sharon Jarnigan captured it well. We're all learning something new each and every day. And we're trying to push the envelope, but do it in a very smart, intentional, and methodical way that is kind of like that operating on the edge of chaos, where those who are sailors, you get up on that keel and you want that boat going as quickly as possible, but you don't want it to tip over. and you don't want it just to luff in the wind. And there's been times I know when I've felt like we cannot go any further or any faster, and someone's picked me up. And there's been other times when I think I've picked others up as we've been trying to progress forward. And I think we're building something really unique for us, and that will be beneficial for students. And I'm so grateful for Donna's leadership, the learning services team, the business team, the HR team, all of the principals, and all the teachers who started emailing the first weekend. Donna, Fred, whatever it takes, whatever we can do. Bus drivers, I'm in a category that, you know, I'm over 60 or whatnot, but if there's something I can do and deliver things, the custodians who have just been so tireless with cleaning our schools, and it's been all about the students. And that's what we've been trying to, that's been the mantra, and it continues to be. And I'm just really proud of being in our school district right now.
So we are a smaller, a smaller district. I see Brian's sentiments there than many of our surrounding, and we all wear many hats because of that. But I know for many of us, that's the reason why we are working here where we are, because this community and this family that we work in is pulls together, and we are up for any challenge, and are pulling each other up the mountain together. And we're gonna get through this. We're gonna move through, and we're gonna come through on the other side and have learned a lot of new things and ways to support our kids. But I think the primary piece we all try to remind each other of as we work through it is, how are we taking care of the kids? Because this is, that's the work that drives us forward.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments regarding the update we had? So 3.5 hours in, we have a few more things to do. Do we want to take like a 2-minute stretch your legs thing? Yes, I'm seeing some nods. So let's do like a 2-minute, don't sign off. You could put us on mute, but like just do a 2-minute stretch.
I'm not. I can mute.
Okay, looks like we have our directors back. So moving on to 4A.
Actually, President Larry, we do have one more piece that is an order of business that is actually something timely that needs to be done. This is in alignment with policy, sorry, I need to make my screen bigger. Board Policy 3141, pursuant to that board policy of enrollment of non-resident students. And based on current and projected enrollment, the superintendent has determined that the district is not open for new non-resident student enrollment for the 2020-21 school year. As you can see here, the superintendent has also considered that additional discretionary enrollment of non-resident students beyond this anticipated student enrollment will at this time create a financial or programmatic hardship in light of available resources for the district. And we're making this determination at this time. However, we know that this is ever-changing times, and there could be potential as we work through the logistics of our enrollment as we approach 2021, that there could be potential for opening up some non-resident enrollment either at specific schools or specific grades, depending on how this evolves over the next few months as we work through this crisis. But at this time, based on the enrollment that we're actually using for our apportionment, which is that end of March or mid-March, sorry, enrollment prior to the closure, that determination would be that we would not be able to have any non-resident enrollment. So that's just an information piece that the policy requires. Now I'm done with the superintendent report.
Oh, thank you. Any questions on that? Seeing none. Going to 4A, post-monitoring language review, board policy 1800 OE1, fundamental 7, equity and inclusion. We had been in study sessions talking about some of our fundamentals. So we were anticipating that we might be looking at some changes, but that hasn't happened. So the idea in establishing the agenda was to review the fundamental as is, and when we are able to get back to the review of those fundamentals, decide we want to make any changes, it's something we can always bring back on the agenda at any point in time. So if you would please take a moment to look at fundamental 7. Oops. Does anyone have any motions, suggestions, comments? I'm not hearing any. I can't see. I can scroll through. I'm not seeing anyone turn off their mute, so I'm going to take that as a no, and we will move on. And again, we can address it if we decide on changes in the future. So going now to number 5, full governance process monitoring, board policy 1800 OE11, facilities and capital projects. This is a level 1 review.
So, so OE11, as you can see, is facilities and capital projects. This is a level 1 monitoring. There are a couple of specific pieces that Ty will go over with you.
So really what OE11 is doing is it's setting the priorities on how we use our physical facilities, essentially how we establish a schedule for maintaining, for construction, replacement, renovations, governs land acquisitions, changes to construction schedules that increase cost, not doing anything without bringing to the board. All change orders during construction would come to the board. We keep our buildings safe and sanitary, that we don't unreasonably deny the public use of the facilities, except in the pandemic emergency, develop consistent administrator guidelines for what the use is, the applicable fee structures, and provide policies, and provide and maintain a comprehensive and functional technology infrastructure. So really what it does is governs all of the decisions we make regarding our physical facilities. We believe that we're in compliance with the policy. We are in the middle of the facility master plan process. We are not in the middle of any large construction projects outside of Merriway Pool, which is going fine, by the way. No large changes there. And that we are consistent in how we deal with the public. And we ask that the board finds the district and superintendent in compliance with 1800 OE11.
Does anyone have a motion?
I'll move that the board find the superintendent in compliance with OE11, facility and capital assets, in whole as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, the motion is to find the superintendent in compliance of board policy 1800 OE11. Please indicate agreement by saying aye. Maggie?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Tam?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion passes 5-0. We do find that the superintendent is in compliance of board policy 1800 OE11. Moving on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion for approval?
I move we approve the consent agenda as published.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Go through and do roll call for a vote. Maggie Ty?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Tam?
Aye.
I vote aye. Consent agenda is approved 5-0. And moving on to superintendent's report.
Just want to remind the board that there was a provision of the Open Public Meeting Act in light of the pandemic, for which we will now need to follow as we move forward in meetings. Our meeting tonight was in compliance because we were moving forward with regular business items that need to be addressed. And we also discussed and had discussion around the crisis itself, the pandemic. We will need to look closely as we move forward in our tentative agenda moving forward to make sure that we are compliant with that as we hold these electronic meetings. We are fully compliant by having an electronic meeting. We do not have to have a physical location anymore, but we do have to have the availability of people being able to call in, which is posted on the agenda and was available on our website. So people can call in. We did post here on the building that information as well so that people could call in as needed. They have to have the access to listen to the meeting. So that was all taken care of for this meeting. And as we move forward for any agenda planning for future meetings, we'll just need to be very cognizant of those provisions that are now in place during this health crisis. And that's all I have.
Thank you. I was looking to see if I went on mute or not. Then moving on to board announcements, inquiries, and reports. Brian, do you have any legislative report to give?
Just some quick stuff. So last time we were together, I talked about the window to submit new proposals for legislative positions to WASDA. The Legislative Committee is looking at pushing that date back a bit to allow more time for proposals. So while this is going on, again, be thinking about state laws and things and positions that you might want to submit. Also, currently, Legislative Committee is keeping an eye on SB 5395. That's the Comprehensive Sexual Health Education Bill. Currently, there's a referendum circulating, and the governor is still within the 90 days before signing it. So it's really unclear right now what is going to happen with that bill, whether or not it'll move forward, or whether the referendum will get enough signatures to put it on the next election cycle. So we're watching that pretty closely. Also, something for us to keep an eye on is House Bill 2421, which pertains to election costs. And this would be new costs to school districts in regard to certain elections. So that's House Bill 2421. Give that a look if you have some time. And other than that, I invite everyone listening in on our meeting to check out WASDA's eClips. You can subscribe to those, and every day, and especially while this is going on, even on the weekends, all of the top information is provided, and any updates that come from the Board of Education, OSPI, or the governor are updated at the very top of that, as well as headlines pertaining to this across the state. So if you haven't subscribed to that as a director, I encourage it, but also anyone else is welcome to engage with that. And then as a point of clarification, Deborah, this week I did not sit in on the regional meeting, which are now ongoing, and you had some guidance or received some guidance that OPMA does not prohibit all of us from attending that meeting. Is that right?
That is correct. I didn't write down all of the reasons, but basically they said that all directors were welcome to participate, that they looked back at the rules for OPMA and decided that, well, just figured that, reanalyzed it to determine that we weren't talking about board business and certainly specifically our specific board business. And it's primarily a listening and information session. So they believe that it's appropriate for any board member that wants to participate. They're going to continue doing them as I'm sure I know several of you have already participated in them, looking to our region as kind of the leaders in this since we've been out the longest. And looking at, it's an opportunity for sharing ideas and successes and things like that. They intend on continuing them, and they were talking about even doing just, one statewide where everyone can call in as well. So it's changing a little bit, but I thought it was a useful presentation, really useful presentation. I don't know how much new information it was from the week before, but as things are changing every day, things change a little bit every day.
No, I think that's fantastic to hear. I encourage everyone to register for that. There's updates from Abigail Westbrook in policy and legal, as well as Marissa Rathbone and Logan Undress with government relations. And then they're bringing in guests and other folks from across WASDA to provide guidance and input and direct us towards resources for school board directors. And of course, because it's a government agency, those meetings are all available to the public, as well as the notes and transcripts and all of that. So if you're unable to register for it, but you want to look at that afterwards, those are available as well. Great information. That's all I have.
Thank you. Moving on to board reports. Anyone want to go first, or should I just go down the line? Maggie Ty.
I'm going to pass. It's been a long night and there's been a lot of material covered and questions answered. So thank you.
Okay. Tam?
Well, I want to thank you for today's really in-depth presentation. I think it gives the community a good clarity of the directions that we're going. And as I think as we're going through different phases of this crisis, you know, we did a really good job in keeping our students healthy and and then, you know, closing the school. I thought that was really seamless. And then now we're ramping up to the next stage of getting instruction more robust and pushing it out. So I think it's really promising, the direction that we're going. And as we're moving forward more into this crisis and as we're getting more of a breather, I hope, well, I urge all of us to start thinking of how do we start to pull the community back, to start basically pulling the parents, you know, involvement back through the PTAs and all the different groups to have them be a part of communicating for us, be sharing resources, because what's really happening now is that parents are asked to do a lot of, you know, helping their students access a lot of the informations. You know, parents are around their kids 24/7 times however long we're here. So there's a lot of stress and a lot of things that are happening. And so I think then the third stage for me is thinking, how do we really be intentional about reaching to our parents and PTAs to help us to sustain this model, right? And so that in the end, that we all come out, you know, not only as the board, the administration, teachers, students, but parents come out of this sane and healthy and well as well.
Thank you. David?
I'd just like to say thank you to all the parents and community members who have sent in feedback to the board, their public input. I know in the past, people would get to present on TV and other people would hear the input as well. It is possible for people to put at the beginning of their email that they would like the public input included in the minutes, and then we would include it in the minutes so that other people could also see it. And that remains an option, so in case anybody wants to do that. But I would just like to let people know that it has been read and continues to be most appreciated. So thank you.
I just want to, I don't remember this being announced, but they told us at the meeting yesterday that OSPI has officially decided that there are no mandatory makeup days after June 19th. So it's been officially, I'm sure our administrators know that. Want our directors to know that. Also, they were saying by no means doesn't mean that districts can't, but we all know that there's financial ramifications if we decide to go past that. So I can't imagine that decision would be made, I know there was talk of it, but that's probably something that we should communicate to families as, you know, maybe we get to make summer plans actually happen, who knows? But I know that that's just information that I think parents would appreciate. The other things that I wrote down to talk about from the meeting yesterday are, we already talked about. I think that, you know, I just had a brief chat with Brian yesterday as he appreciatively talked me off the ledge of like, what can we be doing and how can we be helping? So thank you for that. And after our executive session, to not forget that I know Aaron talked about safe harbor, and I don't know if everyone's familiar with that term. But what we can be doing right now, what we all can be doing, and I think what our responsibility is to be advocating to our legislators to make sure that they can put in legislation that's going to protect our schools, our budgets, our students from anything that might have gone wrong during this time. And fortunately, we have 3 legislators, at least in the 41st, that really understand education issues and are leaders in their respective places to do that. So those would be really, really great places to focus some advocacy for either board members, or not either, but board members and parents in our community who are wanting to do something. It's, I think what the hardest part of this, at least is for me, is, you know, I think all of us are problem solvers, and to see so many lives, you know, in upheaval and not be able to fix it is really hard. I think that's one of the hardest things about watching this happen. We can't fix it for ourselves. We can't fix it for others, and we can't fix it for our kids. But what we can do is be there for them. And, you know, as we read and see and talk about all the time, they're watching us, and they're feeding off of our energy. And if it's calm, positive energy, that's what they're getting. And if it's chaos and frantic concern that, you know, life is going to go askew because our, you know, 8-year-olds miss a couple weeks of school, our kids are going to be okay, our community is going to be okay, and we're going to get through this. So I think it's really important that we keep saying this, that we keep hearing this when we're working together, and that we keep telling this to our friends and our kids, because I think that's what's going to get us through this. So thank you for the great presentation again. And that is it. So
a motion for adjournment.
What?
If all the directors are done with reports, we could entertain a motion to adjourn.
We can.
I move we adjourn.
Seconded.
Why don't you, well, I've got to do roll call. Maggie Ty?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Tam?
Aye.
I vote aye too. So we, motion to adjourn is passed 5-0 at 8:52, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Take care.